every single stream here.
Oh,
But
Melanap. I kind of like the angles a lot better on this one than
yeah, it's a better deal than StreamYard. StreamYard gets kind of expensive, but it looks like we are live and recording here. What's up, folks? This is
okay.
Addy Ads, writer, author, investigative reporter here with Evan Raiklin, self-described deep state marauder and law offensive coordinator, retired Green Beret, an
Yes, sir.
intelligence member of the intelligence
Former.
community, constitutional lawyer, and if you could just give a brief intro to supplement that, sir, and then we don't have too much time just because of the speaker election tomorrow, but we're going to be focusing on your investigation of Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah, let's hit this. I'll try to do it in less than 20 minutes. Bottom line, my background as it applies to this, so that folks can kind of see what perspective I'm coming at this and how I'm attacking this constitutional problem that we are facing. Is I spent a quarter of a century in our national security system. Intel, tactical, operational, strategic. Did human intelligence, counterintelligence, analysis. I taught analysis and national security, so I have a pretty good understanding of our national security apparatus, whether it be intel. And then also, I did have an opportunity in a couple of leadership positions where I was a Green Beret commander at the detachment and company levels in the collective, as well as I served as a military attache in the Republic of Georgia in Tbilisi. But I had the opportunity to counter Russian aggression, MS-13, ISIS, Taliban over the course of that career. Both, obviously, OCONUS and domestically. Picked up a few languages along the way. 5 out of the 6 UN official languages. The only one I'm short on, maybe this year, I'll have to learn a little bit of Mandarin so that we can push back against the CCP commies a lot harder than what our nation has been doing thus far. But that's basically my professional background in the Department of Defense, intel community, special ops community. But when I was not on active duty during that time frame, I picked up a law degree, became an attorney, focused on national security law and constitutional law. So that body of experience, I guess, put me in a position to really, strategically look at things globally, uh, identify problems, operationalize, look at a plan so that it can be operationalized, and then so that down at the lowest level, if you will, it could be tactically implemented and executed in order to defend the U.S. Constitution. I had experience doing it from enemies foreign. Now I've transitioned over since 2020, really after the illegally certified 2020 election, to go ahead and take that background and capability and experience to try to come up with the most unconventional, effective strategies, plans that could be realistically implemented in order to fix the problems facing our nation domestically, right? Against our domestic enemies. And that's kind of how I got into this whole conversation and discussion. Some people call me a constitutional strategist, a political strategist, what have you. I prefer a constitutional defender. So, deep state marauder and law offensive coordinator, so that we can, crush the commies, not only those from external actors, but also that are more close proximity to us in Washington D.C. and then the different capitals within the 50 states. But since I'm not too far away from the swamp, my focus and effort has been on doing a body check to the lawless executive branch headed up by the Chinese Communist Party's ambassador, currently squatting and defiling our White House by the name of Joseph Zhedin, and then his deputy over at the Naval Observatory, and everything downstream from that. And unfortunately, as I've done my research and analysis, uh, most of my focus has been on exposing those that have yet to be exposed by the mainstream faux news and news vax, and not only from the Commie News Network or the Washington Compost, the New York Slimes, or the raw sewages of the world. It's more focused on Mike Pence's role in the illegal spying on Trump in 2016, providing that top cover along with Paul Ryan, the Richard Burrs, the Lindsey Grahams, the Mitch McConnells of the world that ended up putting in in those positions a replacement to James Comey known as Christopher Wray, and then Christopher Wray went ahead and essentially destroyed our constitutional rights by directing the big tech and big media oligarchs to essentially crumble our constitutional norms. And so, with that, I mean, uh, I feel as though my job and role now is to put massive amounts of fear into each one of these constitutional actors that have just wildly violated our Constitution, to put them on notice, educate the country so that uh, we collectively can effectively just, I like to use the phrase, crush the commies.
Yeah, yeah. I like
That's
that
kind
phrase,
of my
sir.
intro, I guess.
No, no, that's great, sir. And before we
And Kevin
pivot,
McCarthy is one of the leaders of the commie network.
yes, yes, he is, sir. And before we pivot, just a general question on our situation. I've been told by another former intelligence veteran that we are, in fact, behind enemy lines in our own country. I don't know what your take is on that, but then we can, of course,
Yeah,
pivot
yeah,
to
absolutely.
your main focus recently, which has been, of course, the House Minority Leader, Kevin McCarthy.
Yeah, so on the first part of your comment slash question is, are we behind enemy lines? Let me put it this way. If you're not familiar with Yuri Bezmenov and the whole ideological subversion methodology that was promulgated by the KGB, probably from its inception, but more broadly was really focused on in the height of the Cold War, particularly in the 60s and beyond, until the collapse of the Soviet Union, where the KGB model was to focus about 85% of its attention and resources to subvert their adversary. And how they subverted their adversary is to go and exploit the existing institutions in that country, obviously the United States, to go ahead and exploit those institutions and the freedom of press that we have to then subvert everything from what's wrong and what's right and wrong, what's criminal and what's not. So as we see that, that was going on in the 60s, and that's why we had the cultural Marxist revolution then. And then while we were able to push back with Ronald Reagan in the 80s in a significant way, that started to rear its head again in the 90s and then into the 2000s, and more, specifically under Obama. And then it was really ratcheted up at the end of the first term for President Trump, because by then, I mean, you had a candidate, Zhiden, which was already co-opted for years, if not decades, by the Chinese Communist Party, and then installed in the White House to then expedite and implement the Chinese version of the KGB's ideological subversion. And so that's why you started seeing on big media, big tech, big pharma, policies being implemented and disinformation being promulgated that promotes the genocide of our children. That if the children survive the genocide in the womb, then you need to genocide them at birth, right? In New York and other states are promoting those policies. And then it moves on to, should those children survive those attempted murders, then it is now incumbent on the state to try to promote this mutilation policy of not only genitalia, but essentially mutilation of the brain, of the psyche, of absolutely everything. And then unfortunately, it's not only that the Chinese Communist Party captured pretty much entirely the Democrat Party, but also a good portion of the Republican Party in the United States, particularly those at the helm. And again, I'm going to remind everyone, your Mike Pence's, your Mitch McConnell's, your Kevin McCarthy's, and I think to a lesser extent, although I haven't done the deep dive on her specifically yet, I will be doing it after this speaker's race tomorrow, in the run up to the RNC chair race, possibly as well to a lesser extent, Ronna Romney. And again, due to her relationships with her uncle, Mitt Romney, who again, it's all the ties and leverage back to China, Chinese Communist Party, that creates this dilemma of these America Last policies that literally, rape and pillage the taxpayer. Uh, in this instance, with the $1.7 trillion that was just passed, Meanwhile, there is no retribution or recourse or consequence for this unlawful behavior. And that's why, my role is to expose the problem and come up with solutions. And to transition to the second part of your question, Kevin McCarthy, I wanted to make sure that in the upcoming speakers race, we had somebody that was legitimate and bold enough to be able to, push back and do a body check against everybody that I've listed as domestic enemies. Uh, you know, a good portion of the executive branch, White House, Naval Observatory, the FBI, good portions of the DOJ, as well as the Department of Homeland Security. And so now I came up with this 13-part series that talks about what a national security threat and risk Kevin McCarthy is. And the conclusion to the 13-part series resulted in what you have up there in front on the screen, which is denied clearance because I went through all the 13 adjudicative guidelines that the director of national intelligence would use to determine whether or not someone is fit to hold the clearance. And considering the Speaker of the House is the number 3 authority in our federal government, we need to have somebody beyond reproach that's not compromised or compromising. I mean, his nickname is Compromise Kevin. So we can't have that. I put that together to educate as many people as I could, to include those that would potentially have the opportunity to vote for him. And it appears as though our efforts are gaining momentum because just a couple hours ago, Club for Growth actually just came out with a statement, a very bold statement, essentially asking, almost demanding that members of Congress, indirectly, without saying his name, to not vote for Kevin McCarthy. And I was shocked. I mean, that's massive. So
Yeah.
I guess depending on what transpires tomorrow, if we get to block Kevin McCarthy, I'd like to say that I had a small role, and you helped out with the small role to get folks activated and to showcase. You can see there that little, the red, yellow, and green in each of the 13 categories. What level of risk is posed by a Kevin McCarthy, uh, and then obviously downstream from that, should we place him in a speaker? Those are the problems that are still yet to be addressed of having him in office. And so, I mean, that's pretty much it for Kevin McCarthy. So then the next question is who should be Speaker of the House, right?
Right. Right. Yeah. Who do you think, sir?
All right. So I mean, you got to have the analytic range and depth and breadth to just realistically determine who would be palatable for the rhinos, and then who would be most agreeable to. If you can pause right there, just at that first one, you're
Oh
scrolling.
yeah.
Who would be most
Yeah. Yeah.
agreeable to what's the most conventional path if it's not Kevin, and then what's the most unconventional path. And as a former Green Beret, I like the most unconventional path that allows you to resolve a problem in the quickest fashion possible. So we'll finish off with that. We got about 5 minutes. So the first one is going to be, what's his name? Steve Scalise on November 15th in the
Mm,
internal conference vote, got unanimous vote for majority leader. I could see that the more moderate or weak or China leveraged part of the Republicans are going to push for the Steve Scalise, but that still might not be sufficient for two reasons. If he doesn't go back to motion to vacate the chair rules pre Nancy Pelosi, that's a non-starter for the Freedom Caucus. 5 plus, actually, probably more like 39 of them. And now with the Club for Growth coming out, I think that's going to impact some more members, significantly more members, possibly upwards of over 100 and maybe more like 150 members. That's going to impact just with that statement alone, would be my guess. So um, I think that's going to be the leverage, Steve Scalise, but he has to want it, right? You can't force somebody to do a job. If he doesn't take it, then I think the next best option, which I think we get to 218, is a Jim Jordan. But again, I don't
mm,
like that path because we need him to chair the Judiciary Committee, along with Matt Gaetz on that committee, to go ahead and body check the commies over at the FBI to create massive consequences, so that there's a 1-2 punch between Jordan and Gaetz, because the whistleblowers are already, what was his name? Steve Friend and and
Yep.
what's
Yep.
the other,
Stephen Friend.
Kyle Seraphin, and some of the other whistleblowers. They're just waiting. They're literally, they got their. I think Steve Friend just tweeted out, my phone's right next to me. I'm waiting for that call because at noon tomorrow, once we start to get the speaker and allocate the chairs, it's literally hit the ground running. An absolute body check against the DOJ, FBI, and I'd be more than happy to help out as a whistleblower, former, I guess, member of the Department of Defense, to go ahead and expose all the lawless activity of the Department of Defense that I witnessed over the last couple of years.
Wow.
But that'll be on the House Armed Services Committee with a couple folks that I know that are on that committee. The other thing is, so that would be Jim Jordan, and if it's not Jim Jordan because he decides to remain on Judiciary, which he's indicated for the last last year plus, at least the several times that I've spoken with him, he wants to remain as chair of Judiciary. But we'll see how this plays out. And then the next, I think, option is going to be a little bit more unconventional, but within reason. I think Lee Zeldin would be thrown around as a potential Speaker of the House because he ends his term tomorrow, since he did not win the governor's race when he was running in New York.
Hmm.
And then if it's not Lee Zeldin, then I would say that the best option is going to be, best option that is a former or current member of the House would be Devin Nunes. And then Devin Nunes, that would kind of be a 1-2 punch package deal. I would very aggressively advocate for Kash Patel to be the sergeant at arms should Devin Nunes come into play, right? So that way we can release the tapes, pull back on the criminal referrals, go ahead and exercise prosecutorial discretion within the sergeant at arms to go after Nancy Pelosi, her staff, her family, and their entire collective role in what they did on January 6th, and prosecute them for it, obviously, eventually. And then also Mike Pence and Kevin McCarthy and Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer for not allowing that quorum on January 6th. So, and then that's kind of the span and the range of who could potentially be a speaker. But I think the most unconventional and the most aggressive, law offensive manner in which to maraud the deep state, if you will, again, in line with my ethos, is to do the following: is to, after the first vote, and Kevin McCarthy does not have the votes, I say that President Trump, uh, if you were listening, I'd say, sir, with all due respect, once Kevin does not have the votes after the first vote, you need to immediately come out and then pull back on your endorsement and then put out a statement saying that the Congress needs to coalesce behind someone other than Kevin since he doesn't have the votes, and quickly convene so that 218 are amenable to the following stipulations as listed in that leaked memo by the Freedom Caucus, mind you, that National File broke, and then hitting all those 5 components. And then in addition, in essentially the next sentence say that should no one achieve 218 or want to step forward to be the Speaker of the House that can attain 218, then to put out a statement that, I, as President Trump, would accept a speakership should 218 members or more decide to grant that to me, under the condition it would be for a temporary, and then to basically conduct those 5 things listed in that leaked memo, coupled with the nullification of impeachment 1 and 2, and an opportunity to rebut everything that has occurred illegally from the deep state and the government, and then as well as big tech and big media. And then his last act after impeaching Biden and Harris and transmitting that over to the Senate with impeachment managers Gates, Jordan, Gosar, Biggs, etc. He would then preside over a 12th Amendment redo, since there was not a quorum on January 6th of 2021 when they conducted that joint session, because there was only 44 members of House and Senate, and it actually requires at least 34 members in the House and 67 in the Senate. So he would redo that, and thus he would get reinstated under that 12th Amendment. And that's really the path and plan. So let's knock it out. And I got to roll.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Mr. Raiklin. You have a great night, sir, and should be exciting
Yeah,
to
you can
see what
follow me
happens
on
tomorrow.
Telegram, Substack, all the other ones. And send me the link when you got it so we can put it out.
Will do, sir. Will do.
All right, appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time.
Thank you. Likewise, sir.
All right, bye.
Thank you, sir. Stay frosty, folks. Thanks for everybody listening tonight, and we'll see everybody next time.